Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on what part of the world you're coming from, and welcome to our Engaging with External Users at Scale with Microsoft 365 and branded portals. My name is Peter Carson. I'm going to be the presenter for the next hour here. It's actually a new presentation, new deck, so we'll have to see how the timing works out as we go through here. I'm the president of Extranet User Manager. I'm also 11-time, I think now, Office Apps and Services Microsoft MVP. So I used to be the SharePoint group, and it's kind of morphed over time into the Office side. My contact information is up in here. We are going to be sharing the deck and the recording after the webinar, so you'll be able to get all my contact information out from there. I'm actually going to turn my camera off just so you can get a better view of the slides as we go through now that we've gone through the intro piece on there. So a little background, we're not going to spend too much time on Extranet User Manager, but for those of you not familiar with us, we've been playing in this space for the better part of, I guess it's 13 years now, going way back. And in fact, 7 years back to when we first started working with Microsoft 365. It was a lot less mature back then. A couple of years after that, they brought in what's called Azure Active Directory business to business, and we started leveraging that. And that's really our focus that we're going to be going through here today. We've had a lot of different versions of the product, and we're actually just about to launch this week the new version of the suite from there. We do have customers all around the globe, a wide variety of customer scenarios. But let's get down into the meat itself. So we've done the introductions. So let's talk about Microsoft 365 portals first. Why would we build on 365? What does that look like? But the bulk of the session is actually going to get into customer scenarios. We've got a number of customers that were kind enough to allow us to share their scenarios and their details. We've got a few others that we've obscured who the organization is, but the scenario is still there that we're going to go through. There's actually 5 different scenarios of different combinations that we're going to touch on. We're going to go through our whole Extranet product suite as part of that. Again, we're not going to be salesy about this. It's really about how do you address those different customer scenarios, but we will wrap up with a quick overview on the product suites and next steps and such through there. We do have the Q&A open in the Teams Live meeting, so feel free to ask questions there. I likely won't get a chance to look as we're going through, but we will pause and Logan, you're moderating for me. If you see something that's topical for where we are right at that point in time, feel free to let me know and we can pause. I do like making things as interactive as we can. We are doing this as a Teams Live meeting, so there is a lag from that point of view. Hopefully this is the last one we do. I think Microsoft's finally addressed the privacy concerns around public Teams meetings, so hoping to use that in future sessions that we do. So let's start with the question of why. Like, why would you build a Microsoft 365 focused portal? Well, I mean, number one is, we're assuming that Microsoft 365 is where you're already working. We hold no illusions that if you're a G Suite organization that's deeply embedded into Google, you're probably not going to use Microsoft 365 as your external collaboration tool. It doesn't make sense. Google has their own tools and other platforms have their own tools there. But much of the world is using Microsoft 365, and it's going much beyond just Exchange and simple use of 365 into Teams. That's taken off through COVID, SharePoint Online. So how can you build a portal that relies on that foundation? So if we think about SharePoint Online and Teams, they're very much joined at the hips. I mean, if you're working with documents in Teams, the reality is that you're actually working with documents in SharePoint Online. You may be doing meetings like we're doing here. You may have recordings, which we're also doing here, channel conversations. All of those things can come into the portal as part of that. And really the goal is, how do we stop sharing through email? It's a really poor way of trading documents and collaborating and communicating out and collecting from organizations. And there's challenges around third-party solutions as well. If you use SaaS offerings that maybe are outside of your corporate standards, we've all heard about shadow IT, where people get their credit card out, or their P card, and they just spin up their own solution with an external third party. But from a security and compliance point of view, maybe it's all falling through the cracks from that point of view. And there's major risk for the organization as part of that. A lot of our clients are larger enterprises, publicly traded companies, large public sector organizations where things like security and compliance are super important to them. And shadow IT is a big concern to them. The challenge, though, is that the out-of-the-box Microsoft 365 can be overwhelming. Not just for the people within your organization that are trying to share, but for the people outside as well who may not use those 365 tools themselves. They're not familiar with them, and it could just be information overload. But really, if you can leverage those security and compliance features that are right in the Microsoft 365 stack, things like Azure Information Protection and Rights Management, where you can encrypt documents, even when they leave the portal, if somebody downloads them onto a thumb drive, they're still encrypted, they're still protected. There's some really rich tools there. Data loss prevention that can categorize documents to say, hey, I see a health card number or a social insurance number in this document. I should treat it differently. That's all part of the Microsoft stack. Records retention, how long should you hang on to stuff? Is there a legal liability to retaining this for too long? Do you have a file plan that you need to enforce? Maybe you're doing that for your internal records. How do you do it with your external parties as part of that? And even things like multi-factor authentication, the idea that when you log into a portal, should you have to use a second factor, like a text message sent to you, or maybe you're using the Authenticator app, and can you set up conditional access policies that say, hey, maybe not everybody that comes into my portal needs to do that, but certain parts of the portal are highly sensitive. Maybe I've got a general members portal and I don't want to trouble people with multi-factor authentication. There's not a lot of risk there, but maybe our board of directors portal that has highly confidential documents in it, we do want to put that on. So Microsoft provides the abilities to do that. So it's really about saying, hey, you're working in Microsoft 365 today. How do you make it part of how you're sharing and do it at scale? Do it for larger audiences externally. If it's small amounts, hey, I've got this PowerPoint deck that I want to share out to 4 people, the out of the box works great. If I have to share it out with 4,000 people, that's a different challenge from that point of view. So let's get into the portal considerations themselves. And one of the first questions we ask organizations when they're thinking about building a portal, regardless of who the audience is, it could be a customer portal, a vendor portal, a donor portal, a volunteer portal, they'd all have the same considerations. How are people going to come into the portal? Do you know all those people? If it's a board of directors portal, you probably know who your board members are and you can invite them in. If it's a members portal, maybe you do, maybe you don't. Maybe you want to have a public registration on that. We'll go through some scenarios where we can have a public registration, but we can still put rules around that and say, hey, we can qualify and put people in different buckets and have different security based on things like email domain that they come from. Or private registration, this idea that, I can share a link with somebody to register and they can actually share that with other people. That's okay. They can forward it on to people they think should be part of the portal. And we may still want to have approvals around that, but it's a great way to bring in folks that you don't directly know yourself. You can provide that link to be shared out. Okay, so once people have come into the portal, what are they going to do there? What sort of functionality do they require? Do you just want to publish out some secure web content, stuff that you wouldn't put on your public website because it is for a private audience? You want it behind a password, and we'll get to passwords in a minute. We actually don't want to manage those for you, and I'll explain what that means. Or do you want to get into documents? Do you want to view documents? Do you want the ability to download documents? Or maybe you want to collect documents from your portal members. Maybe it goes as far as co-authoring. You've got a Word document, a PowerPoint presentation. Microsoft 365 is really powerful with its co-authoring features. Logan and I were doing this just before this session. He was editing some slides, I was editing other ones live in the same PowerPoint presentation. Same thing with Word and Excel, it works really well. Or maybe you want to bring them into SharePoint Online sites. I know I said before that can be onerous, but for certain scenarios, it makes a lot of sense. You want to bring them right into that SharePoint Online site or right into a Microsoft team for that party. Or there may be third-party or internal applications. We're going to talk about learning management systems like Desire to Learn and LMS 365, Moodle that we've integrated into portal solutions and made it part of a single portal as far as the members are concerned. And then the other important thing is who's responsible for the content in the portal and the administration of it. And this is an important question. We're big fans of delegation, saying, you know what? The IT department probably doesn't want to manage who's a member of which sites within your members portal. You really want the business owners to have control around that. So a big part of our products are allowing you to delegate that control in a way that the business can securely manage that and IT can feel comfortable that they've got the governance in place and structure around that. So we're going to talk about a lot of different portal scenarios. We're going to dive into member portals. So we've got a number of associations, the Canadian Electricity Association, the Ontario Association of Children Aid Society that we're going to be talking about. So they have a big member portal requirement. They also have board and committee sites in their data portals where they collect data from their members And they actually have data warehouses and dashboards that they present that data back to their members. Document sharing, whether that's pushing documents out or collecting that from people. And I mentioned the learning management systems, getting into training portals as part of that as well. So if we look at those scenarios across the different customers that we're going to be talking about as part of today's session, Canadian Electricity Association is actually where we're going to spend most of the time. And full disclosure, the first two, CEA and OCAS, are not live yet. We're actively developing these portals. So I'm going to be using their development integration environments to do that. Moldmasters has just gone live with their portal with their first pilot customers, but I'm going to use their dev portal for that. And then we have a public utility company, a publicly traded company who will remain nameless, that we're going to take you through some customer scenarios on that one as well. So the CA one's the broadest. It covers almost all of the different scenarios that we've got for discussion here. So let me start with just a little background context of who CEA is. They do have an existing members portal that we're building on, and really as an organization, they're the national voice for safe, secure, sustainable electricity. So they really target three different audiences for their portal. There's the people that work for the public utility companies. So the Ontario Power Generations, the Toronto Hydros of Canada are members of the association. And then they have corporate members. So these are the Deloittes and the Accentures that provide services to the utility members. So they're the second category. And the third category, actually anybody who's a member of the public can sign up to the portal, and they've got a training program that they're going to be launching around electricity fundamentals. That'll be open. It is a paid course, but as a member of the public, you can get your credit card out, pay for the course in the portal, and sign up and go through the learning management system as part of that. They have a board of directors. They have about 50 plus different committees, each with their own membership in there, and they have 8 unique data portals they're going to be talking to as well as part of that. So the first thing that we did, I mean, we're going to take you at the end through sort of the different scenarios of implementing a portal. And this was sort of the more complex end of the spectrum. They had a lot of different systems, a lot of different existing portals, and a smattering of different technologies as part of that. So there was 4 different existing sites that we reviewed as part of a portal assessment engagement that we did within this summer, and set some high-level goals. And one of them was single sign-on. We're a big fan of this. Their current portal had at least 3 different usernames and passwords that people had to remember to get into different resources within the association. So we want a single identity, a single registration, and drive that through from that. And kind of related to that, they had contacts for members, for corporate partners, for the committee members in a bunch of different places. One of those places was Salesforce. We decided to standardize on that. They had a lot of on-premises infrastructure, so we wanted to move everything to the cloud, get a single data platform from a reporting point of view, and of course, cybersecurity is important to everybody these days. So those were sort of the high-level goals of the engagement. And what we've come out of that is a roadmap to say, hey, you're using Teams, and we're actually leveraging Teams as part of our solution. So let's get some governance tools in place for that. My last webinar was on Orchestry, which is a third-party tool we are a partner of. They've got a great tool around Teams governance that we're going to be implementing as part of our project with CEA. We've decided on Microsoft Azure Active Directory for the single sign-on. So all their different solutions will come through that one sign-in. We're building a single branded portal that I'm going to be showing you with the community sites, the data portal, the LMS integration, and we've really made Salesforce the center of all this to pull it all together. They still use MailChimp from a marketing point of view, so we're going to build some integrations for them between Salesforce and MailChimp as well. So before I get into the demo, I just want to give you some high-level context of what the portal looks like. So the first part is from a registration and profile point of view. So when I come to the portal, I have the ability to sign in or register, and we make that one decision. I'll show you what that means in a minute. It either takes you into the registration path, or if you're already a member, it takes you through the sign-in path. And as a member, you can maintain your profile across those 3 different buckets of users. And then I'm going to focus on the members, the first of those 3 buckets. There's a lot of things they can do. The other 2 buckets are a subset of these. So as a member, I can see all the councils and committees, those 50 plus committees. I can see which ones I belong to and go to committee sites for this with meeting agendas and documents and all that richness there. And I'll show you what that looks like. If I don't belong to a committee, I can see sort of some high level information about that committee. And I can actually see other people in my organization. So let's say I work for OPG, Ontario Power Generation, and I want to know who else in my organization belongs to which committee. So if I need to get information from one of those other committees, I can reach out to one of my colleagues. So I'll actually be able to see the membership of all those committees across my organization. There's a member directory that everybody can opt in. So by default, you're not listed in there, but you can opt in and say, yes, list me in the member directory, and optionally go beyond that and list even my business or mobile numbers I want as part of that. The Electricity Fundamentals in Canada, that's the course that I was talking about that's delivered through the learning management software. And then we've got the data portals where we both collect data from members, and then we provide it back in aggregated form as part of Power BI dashboards, and I'll show you how that all hangs together. So let's get into the actual demo side of it. And what I thought I would do is I would start off on their dev site not signed in. And I'm going to take you through two different scenarios here. So when I hit the sign in register here, the first thing that it does is says, well, what's your email address? I'm going to use one of my past ones that's a dummy email address. I'm not actually going to go all the way through the registration. I just want to show you how this functions. So what it's done is it said, go look in the directory of everybody who belongs to this member portal and see this person already has an account. If they do, just take them through the sign in. If they don't, take them to the registration. And what we did is we look at the last part of their email address, their email domain, and from that we can infer an organization. If it's opg.com, okay, they work for Ontario Power Generation, and you can be pretty certain about that because they have an OPG issued email address. That would drive them straight into the utility member bucket here. And you can see the registration morphs a little bit. In fact, it would have pre-selected Ontario Power Generation as the company. They fill all their information in there. This is where they can opt in to say, yes, I want to be in the member directory, and go ahead and include my business and mobile phone as part of that, and they complete the registration. And if they've come in with an email address that matches, and we've looked up the company name as part of that when they register, we just automatically make them a member of the portal and put them in that privileged utility member group so they see all the rich functionality. And the same sort of thing happens on the corporate partner. There's a different list of organizations, different matching of email domains, and then the public is everybody else from there. And we're actually using Salesforce to drive all this. So Salesforce has the list of, who all the utility member organizations and corporate partner organizations are, and what are their email domains underneath that, so we can drive this registration through there. But let me come back and let me sign in with a user who's already registered. So when I come in with that email address and I submit, I'm taken to a Microsoft login page. Now, we haven't actually branded this one just yet. It is a Microsoft page, but you can actually put CEA branding and look and feel on this. That's part of the plans for this project. This particular email is somebody that doesn't use Microsoft 365. I mentioned before, we don't want to deal with passwords. So if it was coming from an organization that used Microsoft 365, OPG is a client of ours as well. We know that they do use Microsoft 365. They wouldn't even see this, and typically they'd already be signed into their OPG sites, and they wouldn't even see a login prompt. It would just take them straight in. But in this case, that account's not set up that way. I have to hit this send code. The nice thing here is every time somebody logs in this scenario, we're validating that they still have access to this email domain. So if they leave the organization, they don't have access to that email, they don't have access to your portal anymore. And likewise, in the OPG scenario, if they leave OPG is going to shut down their account, and they're not going to be able to log in with that account either. So it really provides some good control around who is your active users in there. It takes a second sometimes for Microsoft to send that across. Let me just have a look at that. Oops. I'm just going to pop this up on another. I'm actually using the web client here because it comes through a little quicker. I thought my Outlook desktop would do it, but here, let's grab this. Okay. So this is the email that came from Microsoft saying, here's your verification code. It's called a one-time passcode because you can only use it once and then it's not valid anymore. It's also only valid for 30 minutes. So it's not a long-lived thing. Use it as part of your sign-in, and then you're done. And you can set the portal up to say, allow people to stay signed in for say 30 days and they don't have to go through that process. That's up to you, balancing security and convenience from there. So I've signed in as that Peter Demo 1 account, and I actually belong to a number of committees, and I am a utility member account. So I see the rich homepage for the portal. So we don't have all this fleshed out yet because it's still a work in progress, but this will take me to the member directory. Anybody who's opted in, I'll be able to see all their contact information, search through that. I can sign up for the EFIC course, the Electricity Fundamentals course, and go into the LMS, and we're going to provide single sign-on, so you don't have to sign into the learning management software. It just takes you straight into there. The big part that I want to look at here is the committees and the data portals. So if we look at, let me actually start with all committees. So let's say there's a committee that I don't belong to, and I'm curious what that committee has in it. So I'm actually going to flip to a slightly different browser here so that I can see the back end side of this as well. Okay. So I've got this pre-staged up here. So let's say I wanted to look at the climate change and air issues steering task. So this is basically CEA's place to communicate to all of their members what this task group is. This isn't for the people that belong to the group. This is the people that are members that are curious what this group does. So all 50 plus groups will have a page like this that explains to everybody who's a utility member what all the different committees and such are through there. Now, if I actually belong to a committee, like I belong to this Generation Council committee, I can go into that and I'll get to this page here. And again, we haven't done anything pretty with it just yet. These are just sort of initial drafts at the pages, but this is a sample of what a committee homepage would look like. So this is the Generation Council that I'm in. The big things for council is actually the meetings. So when's my next upcoming meeting and what are my past meetings so I can look back at those details. And who are the other members? I mean, this list would typically be longer. Each utility member organization gets one seat on each of the committees. So there'd be probably 50 plus people as members of this particular committee. Under the hood, this is actually a Microsoft Teams site, and I'll show you how that piece comes together and what that looks like. But let's say I'm John Smith from OPG, and I'm curious about the December 15th meeting. I can click into that. Whoops. I think I timed out because I had this tab open for a while. There we go. Now we haven't wired these up to the right meetings because again, like I said, this is all just coming together from a development point of view, but I've come into what we call a meeting package for a particular meeting. So when is this meeting? What's the link? If it's a Teams online meeting, which most are these days, let me join that meeting. Link to the document that has the meeting minutes because this is a meeting in the past. Maybe we recorded the session and we've got the recording link in there. Who's the contact for the meeting? So this information is about the meeting as a whole. And then on the right hand side here, we've got all the documents related to the meeting. So I can see the agenda, the minutes, any of the supporting documents. So I can click on those and I'm actually into Word Online and SharePoint, and I can see that document. I could co-author if I had edit rights to it, so I'm into the full experience. But the key is that we provided a very simple experience for the committee members. They don't have to worry about the complexity of SharePoint Online and Microsoft 365. They just say, here's my package. In fact, they can just say, select all those documents and download it. What we'll do on the fly, we'll actually zip all those documents into one package and provide it to them. They can click on that, open it up, and there's my 5 documents. I'm all set for the meeting. I've got my agenda, I've got my supporting documents, away I go from there. So the whole point of this portal is to make it very easy to do those sorts of things. In fact, maybe as a committee member, I've got a document I want to share with the committee. I could upload a document off my local system and drop it in there. And there's actually a workflow behind that. Maybe that shouldn't go into the meeting package immediately. Maybe we want an approval by the committee owner to say, yes, this might have been a document they wanted to share just with me, or there's a document that I should approve and make available to all the other committee members from there. So you can build a lot of workflow processes around how that hangs together. So let's keep going through. So we've talked about the committees. Let's come down to the data portal side. So this is an interesting one. The idea here is that you want to collect data from your members and aggregate it and provide it back to the organization. So Toronto Hydro could compare against Mississauga Hydro and say, how are we performing from and outages and time to repair and all the different stats that they have as a utility across Canada. So that becomes really valuable information for all the members to look at. And some of that information ultimately can be published publicly. You can sanitize and provide a higher level view so the members of the public could actually see, how does my utility company compare to the industry norms across Canada? They actually get a lot of interest from that point of view. So let's say I'm a member of that data portal and I want to come in and have a look at that. So this is a very simple first cut at what a data portal looks like. And what we've talked about putting on here is some training materials, maybe a video that explains to members, how do I upload data sets? And it's actually going to be very familiar to how the committees work. In fact, we've lifted the committee as part of this, but this would end up being a data portal spot where it's data packages that are uploading through here. So basically, uploading Excels is probably the most prominent scenario. You'd have an Excel template that people would grab, fill their data in, upload it into here, and we'll have a workflow that grabs that and makes it part of the data warehouse. Once they have that, they can come to the dashboard. Here's where it gets interesting because we're embedding Power BI into the portal. So this is a Microsoft service that allows you to see very rich, very interactive dashboards that aggregate that data up. So I can put this into full screen mode and say, hey, I want to play with this dashboard. Now, this is a sample Microsoft dashboard. It's not actually a CEA. None of the data we're sharing here today is actually client data from a privacy and protection point of view. But you can see how I can interact with the dashboard and see changes as I click on one thing in here. It changes the other pieces through there. It's a very interactive, set of dashboards and reports that I've got through here. So Power BI is an incredibly powerful tool for doing that. I won't get too deep into it, but there has been licensing challenges around how do you bring the guest users into Power BI. What we're planning on using here is called a Power BI embedded service. You basically pay by the hour to Microsoft for the time that people are viewing the reports, and we can turn the service off automatically to say, hey, nobody's looking at reports in the middle of the night, don't pay for the service. I mean, the base level service, if you left it running 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, would cost you about $1,000 a month. But if you think, hey, we've only got people looking a couple days a month, maybe that only costs you $50 or $100 a month. So it can become very cost effective. And you don't have to worry about getting individual licenses for individual users. It covers everybody who's coming into the portal. So how do we create these spaces? If we come back to our different sites that we've got here, let's say I'm spinning up a new committee. What does that look like? Well, what we've done is we've actually leveraged Orchestry for that. So I won't go too deep into this, but let's say, for example, that I want to set up a new committee. What we've done is created a template in Orchestry for a committee. So whoever has the appropriate rights at CEA will be able to say, hey, let's create a new committee, and it'll take me through a wizard. It'll ask me a number of questions. I'll put in whatever the name of that committee is and continue through here. I'm not going to take us all the way through the process. It takes a while to actually set up the team site, probably about 10 or 15 minutes for Microsoft to do its things from that point of view. But basically, they answer these wizard questions. They go from there. Maybe there's an approval process to say, hey, we don't want everybody creating committees. But the cool thing is that we can actually link this into our products. So if I look at the management side of it, and I'll go just briefly into the under the hood templates for that particular committee site. So what we have here is a template for committee. So here I put in all the details, the logo that I want to show, the name and description of the template and such, but I can point it to what's called a live template. So this CEA committee template is actually a Microsoft Team and SharePoint team site, and I can configure that exactly the way I want every committee to look like. So all the meeting document sets and the organization we have for committees will make that part of the committee template. And every time you create one of those, we're actually going to use this to spin up the 50+ committees initially. They'll all be created in a consistent way, which is a really powerful part of Orchestry. And then I'm going to geek out for a second here on the integration side. There's what's called a webhook URL. This is basically calling to logic app, which is a Microsoft way of doing workflows in the cloud. Really powerful. You can integrate lots of different systems in here. In fact, we're using it to build the Salesforce and LMS integrations as part of the CEA portal. And basically what Orchestra does is it calls that workflow when it's done what it's doing, and then we can do the add-on pieces from there. And what happens there, if I come into our Extranet User Manager product here, what we're doing is creating what's called groups for each committee. So if I look at something like that, Generation Council Committee, all the details around that committee are set up here. So that Orchestra is going to call a workflow that sets all this up and gets everything to go for there. So that join page that I was showing you before, this is a live editor of full rich HTML content that you define what you want to have on that page for non-members. And then this here literally is what you want the landing page to look like for that committee. I want a members list, and this is not static HTML. This will be live. It'll grab who all the members are in that committee and render that on. It'll look at what are the upcoming events, what are the past events in there, and it'll create the content dynamically through here. So once you've set the template up here, you don't need to touch it. This page will morph and change itself as you book new meetings and go through that process. You even have the ability to say, hey, let's have a welcome email and put in some rich content that you want new committee members to receive when they become part of that committee. Hey, welcome to the Generation Council Committee. This is what we do. This is how often we meet. Here's the link to the site. Come check it out, and looking forward to seeing you at the next meeting. However you want to work it from a communications point of view, you have the ability to put all that in there. And then as we come down into the actual committee workspace itself. Sorry, I've got too many going here. Yeah, so creating an actual meeting, so not the committee, but hey, I want to now book the December 2021 meeting so that I can set up the meeting link and upload my documents and do all that. What we'll have in there is a form that people can fill out. It's very simple to say, hey, on this date to this date, we have a meeting on this topic, and I want it to be an online Teams meeting. Go, and that will run a workflow that will take people through. Or we'll set everything up. So it'll create that upcoming event. It'll create the spot to put your documents in it. It'll create the calendar invites that go out to all the committee members. It just simplifies that whole process. So as a committee owner, I don't have to worry about these different moving pieces and how they fit together. I say just, I need to set up my next meeting, bang, go, and it's done for me from there. So we can build a rich workflow around that. So as I predicted, I've spent a fair bit of time on the CEA scenario. I think we've covered a lot of the pieces that I wanted to as part of that. So I've talked about the Orchestra and the automation around that, the meeting packages, the onboarding registration, how that works, the home page. We kept those in the slide deck, so if you're referring back to the deck later, you can see what those things look like. Just getting technical again for a minute. I won't go too deep in this session on this side. But this is all up in the cloud running in Microsoft Azure. So the portal site is out there. It's connected to their Salesforce. We have all the different committee sites, the data portal sites, the learning management system, data warehouses for the data portals. And under the hood, it's all actually running on SharePoint Online. So we hide that complexity from everybody, but you can go right in and look at the document packages for the committee meetings. It's all there in SharePoint Online, but we've provided a much simpler interface to make it easier for people to come in from that perspective. So I'm going to pause for a sec, take a quick sip. So let's go into our second scenario, which is the Ontario Association of Children's Aid Society. So this is the member organization or association above the 50+ children's aid societies across the province of Ontario. So Children's Aid Society of Toronto would be probably the biggest example. Each major municipality across the province tends to have their own Children's Aid Society, maybe at the city level, maybe at the regional level, depends on the particular geography there. And OCAS as an organization basically provides services to those member organizations. So they act as the conduit to Ministry of Child Services at the provincial government level. They deal with communications, they provide education and training to their members. But they also have child welfare organizations and members of the public. So we actually launched the first version of their portal. Actually, they were probably our first client on Azure Active Directory B2B, going back about 6 or 7 years now. And we're actually doing a refresh as we speak now. So we're updating their portal to our current product platform and the latest bits from Microsoft. So we're doing a full refresh on that. So we're calling it the My OCAS members portal. The main pieces here, there is a self-registration, very similar to what I was showing you on the CEA scenario. They have single sign-on into Desire to Learn and Training Orchestra because they provide a learning management system there as well. And we've got a lot of the same rules around auto approval. If I have a Children's Aid Society of Toronto email domain, I'll get automatically put in the right group based on that, and there's no approvals required for that. When we launched that auto approval, it was in a previous update of the portal about 2 years ago, I think. They were onboarding upwards of 500 new members a day because they had a lot of funding from the ministry to provide courses to their members and associates. So there was a ton of people coming in, and I forget the figure, it was north of 95%, pretty close to 100% of those people came in through that auto approval. So that technique worked really well to onboard thousands of people and bring them through that. And then they could provide the reporting back to the ministry to say, hey, who's in Desire to Learn taking courses, because they have to pay fees associated with that, and manage the whole financial side of that. There's SharePoint Online group sites for specific groups beyond that. And there's e-commerce as well. We're using Stripe both for the CEA and the OCAS portals to collect payments if there's not a prepaid seat for somebody that's taking the training. Okay. So from a registration point of view, sorry, Logan, was there a question there?
Yeah, there is a great question. Could our clients still use this service if they worked on Google platform and do not have Office 365?
Absolutely. Yeah, I mean, there's actually a Google integration into Microsoft 365. Unfortunately, it doesn't give you the single sign-on if you've got your own organizational email domain on top of Gmail. But if you're using it at gmail.com, it works well from that point of view. But yeah, nothing's stopping you from working that way. So this is the registration for the OCAS. You'll notice it bears a striking similarity to the CEA one. We actually have 2 development teams with separate staff working on the projects, but they're working in parallel, and we're actually trading a lot of ideas back and forth. So their 3 buckets are: I'm a member of one of those children's aid societies. I work for a child welfare organization, maybe a CAMH or another healthcare organization that's not directly a society. Or I'm a member of the public, which could be parents, caregivers, foster parents. Really anybody can come in out of that bucket there. And just like I showed you in the CEA example, this registration form morphs depending on which of those buckets, and the auto approval works based on the email domain that you're coming in through there. OCAS has some additional fields from an opt-in, from a communications point of view. We're likely going to be adding similar things like this to CEA. And we have a capture there just to prevent the spam bots from auto-registering lots of accounts that aren't real accounts as part of that. So in the OCAS scenario, just to give you a quick sense of what that looks like, we've got the Stripe e-commerce and course catalog that comes into the portal. We've got Desire to Learn and Training Orchestra, and we've got some jobs that sync profile information and single sign-on through there. So it's a fairly complex integration, but we're quite proud of what we built here. A lot of this is already running. We're just morphing it for the updated and latest version as part of that to leverage Azure AD B2B. Okay. So scenario 3 is a little different. This is a for-profit organization rather than an association. So Mold Masters is a global injection molding mold manufacturer. So they have major operations in North America, in Europe, in Asia, and when clients order a piece, it's a very custom piece of engineering and machining that they're delivering for them. So there's a whole package of 2D and 3D CAD drawings that get generated as part of that process that needs to be reviewed and approved by the customers. And in the past, they emailed those documents back and forth, And it was a pretty onerous process to go through. Those packages could be very large. The drawings themselves could be very large, so that would blow up the 25 meg limit on email attachments and things like that. And you really don't want to do these kinds of things through email. The other thing is they're an SAP shop, so all their manufacturing processes are managed by SAP, and we wanted to have the integration into that. So they already had a drawing package preparation tool that linked to SAP and built these packages of drawings so they could be emailed out to the customers. So we were able to basically, connect onto that to say, shut down that email piece and have it put the drawing packages into your customer portal. And then let's build some workflows for approvals around there. So they may need other internal TSE, their technical support engineer, to sign off on the drawings first before the customer sees it. Then the customer gets notification. They need to approve, but there might be some back and forth. The customer may download some of those drawings, annotate some changes, send them back. It needs to go through another pass with engineering and ultimately get approved from there. When it is approved, we want to actually write that back into SAP to say, hey, this is ready to go to manufacturing. You can go hit the shop floor. We can actually even communicate estimated ship times or ship status as part of that process as well. So there's a simple version of the workflow. An order is made in SAP, it creates a drawing package that automatically gets uploaded to the customer. So there's no hands on any of this part of it here. And the TSE may get an approval before the customer. The customer reviews that. They may upload some revised documents. It may go through a couple of loops in there. And then ultimately they should approve that. The SAP order is updated and it goes to the manufacturing there. I mean, there is a bigger Visio that I won't go into here that's got the details around all those steps in here. The nice thing is that we can build all this as what's called a logic app workflow. It's very much connect the boxes and Lego bits to wire all this together. So it works really well from that point of view. And then this is the actual portal that customers come to see that. So I should have that open in one of my other windows here. Yeah, so let's come into, again, it's the development version. We're not showing any actual drawings as part of this, but I can sign in. I can say, remember me for the next time I come in here. So I can log into the portal. Now, ordinarily, I wouldn't browse for drawing packages. What I would do is I would get an email straight into a particular order. So, let's say we use this dummy 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 order number. It's got my customer reference as a customer that went through SAP as part of that, and I can click into that. And you'll notice it feels a lot like the meeting packages that I was showing you in CA, and it is. It's the same documents product as part of our portal that's doing that. But in this case, the wizard on the left here is showing us details about the order itself. What's the customer name, my reference number, the mold number, the PO number from the SAP. Is there some engineering change request details in there or notes in there that I should be aware of that applies to the order as a whole? And then much like meetings, we've got the general documents over on the side here. What are the various different document types? Is there specific line items on the build that applies to? So there's some documents that I uploaded into the process because I can actually upload documents back in that for revision. So I could grab just a random sample PDF here. I can literally just drag it right into the portal. I get a pop-up. We don't ask you any questions. We're just confirming to say, hey, actually, let me cancel that and grab a couple of things here. So I can do a multi-select. Say, oh, I didn't mean to grab all those. Let me drop that one off. And those are the 2 documents that I want to upload from there. And it's sending it into the workflow and notifying the technical support engineer that, hey, there's some new documents there for you to look at, and it tags them automatically as a customer document. I can see there's my PDF 7 and 8. In fact, even if we wanted to rename these and provide some naming standards around them, that can all be part of the workflow process as well. But you can see it's super simple. There's not a lot of choices for the customer. And when they're happy with that, they just hit the begin approval. They may have some comments in there. They have to, we don't want to make it too easy for them to hit the approve button, so they have to enable that. And at this point, they can only do the approve. If they want to do the changes or changes are required, they have to put something into the comments field to explain what the changes are or what the changes required are on them. And they hit the approve. That goes back into the workflow, and that is ultimately what updates back into SAP. So this is initially getting launched as an English-only portal. Moldmasters does language in 6 different languages globally. So the plan is to provide multilingual across all 6 of those languages, including, I can't remember if it's Mandarin or which Chinese dialect it is, but yeah, it's going to be some challenges there, but we're up for it and looking forward to that. Okay, so that was number 3. We're kind of rolling through them here now because I want to make sure we've got time to get through everything. So scenario 4, public utility company, actually a hydro generation company, and they run hydro dams, and they need to provide emergency preparedness response plans to the community first responders. So I've got a dam on a river system. Downstream from that, I need to know that police, fire, hospital, municipal, they've all got plans printed in place in case there's a disaster that happens and they need a response plan around that. So the utility company offers all that in SharePoint Online, and then they mark it for publishing to portal. And the first responders get email notifications say, hey, there's new documents there. So it's kind of similar to the Moldmasters one that we just went through, except in this case, they're not approving the documents, they're not uploading documents back, they're simply receiving the documents. So it's a way to push those documents out through there. And what's important is knowing that all of those first responders have actually downloaded and printed those documents. If you have a disaster, you can't depend on the internet and downloading a plan to figure out what you're supposed to do. You need it physically on a binder. As much as I hate paper, this is one of the spots where you need paper. So the portal that the first responders come to, have a list of all their documents by river system, when it was published and when I downloaded it. So I can actually see the documents that I've downloaded and the ones that haven't. And we track all this on a user basis. So we can use Power BI and we can actually provide different charts that show, hey, what documents have been published by river system, what's the days to download, how many people downloaded it in less than 1 day versus haven't downloaded it at all. And this isn't a live report that I'm showing, it's a screenshot, but I'd be able to click on that, and see who the users are that hadn't downloaded, so I could harass them. I mean, the system will generate automated emails to harass, but I may need to pick up the phone and say, hey, do I have the wrong person? Who should be receiving this? We're not seeing activity from you from that point of view. So that ability to kind of monitor the process and understand what's happening is a key part as well. And that actually takes us nice from a segue into our last scenario, which is a financial reporting portal. So this scenario is, I've got a publicly traded parent organization, and I've got dozens and dozens of subsidiary organizations. They're each their own legal entities. They each have their own, CFOs and financial reporting, but everything needs to roll up. The publicly traded entity needs to provide quarterly earning results, which means it needs to collect monthly, quarterly, annual, as well as audit reporting packages from each of those subsidiaries. And just imagine, let's say I've got 50 subsidiaries, there's a dozen documents or more for each reporting period. That right there is 600 documents that I need to collect. Trying to do that over email and figure out who's reported what just becomes unmanageable. So the idea of having a portal to organize that is what this is all about. So let me bring you over to our last live demo here. So this is sort of a simple example. We haven't gone too far with it just yet. But what I'm seeing here is I've signed in for somebody who's responsible just for a single subsidiary. I might be responsible for multiple, but we kept this scenario simple and said, hey, I've just got the one sub. And here's my August and September monthly reporting, which are closed because those reporting periods have closed. But we're still in the October reporting period because it opened at the beginning of November. It'll actually close before November 30th. We just made up some dates in there. It probably give them 5 to 10 working days to get that reporting package together and upload it across. And what we can do is we can actually show how many documents are still missing from that reporting package. So these ones are done. There's 0 documents remaining. Great, they did a good job there. I can click into this one. Oh, this one timed out on me as well. We were doing some wonky stuff with branding, so ignore the wild colors there for a second. Okay, so I've come into my October reporting package as the financial reporting person for Acme Corp, and these are the documents that I've already uploaded. And I've got 5 documents remaining. What we want to do is flesh this wizard out a bit more and explain these are the exact documents that you still need to upload. And I can I can do that same sort of upload process and say, hey, I can just pick a random file here, say that's my balance sheet, and go ahead and upload it. In this example, we haven't shown it here with the file names. The workflow will actually rename those files. So it'll have the subsidiary name, it'll have the reporting period, and it'll have the type of document right in the file name of the document. Because what's going to happen at the parent level, they're going to grab that whole package and download it when it's ready, and they want those documents all named in a consistent way so they can organize it over those 50 plus subsidiaries. And just like I was showing you for the dam safety scenario, the ability to build a Power BI report to say, okay, how are we doing not just for one subsidiary, but across all my subsidiaries? Am I closing in on closing the reporting period? Who are my laggards that I need to harass because they haven't started the process, or maybe they got almost all the way there, but they forgot to get one last document in there? As the CFO at the parent publicly traded organization and my finance team, they can use that dashboard to have oversight on this and manage that whole process. So as we're collecting documents at a much bigger scale, it gives us a great way to manage that process. Okay, so those were my 5 scenarios. I got about 10 minutes left here. There was a few other topics that we wanted to go through there. I mean, this is a Logic App workflow. I won't get into the details there, but each of these boxes are basically a step that are doing things, and you connect those boxes there. You can have conditions and loops and all sorts of interesting things in there. So you can build really rich integrations and workflow processes using that Microsoft tool. And it's super cheap to run. You pay literally, tens of millions of a dollar per action for these workflows to execute. So you can end up spending just a couple dollars a month to run your workflows. Okay, I promised I wasn't going to make this a big product pitch, but I did want to give you a sense of some of the things that we touched on here and how they fit into our product suite. So probably the first and foremost was the portal itself. If you look at our pricing page, you won't see a price for portal because we don't actually sell it on its own. It always comes as part of these other pieces. And all the bits for all the pieces are there. They just light up depending on what licensing you have. So the portal is the place where people come to sign in, to go through the registration, to get into the portal. And then they may be going into documents like they were for those last 2 scenarios. We may be using Publisher, which is a way to push rich web content out into that portal and allow your business users to have a very easy way to author that content. And you may be using User Manager to say, hey, I need to manage who's in what groups and how do I onboard them, and do I have auto approval rules like email domains and such. That's all part of the User Manager product. So we often get asked, how long does it take to build one of these portals? What are we looking at? And it's one of those it depends answers. So if you've got a very simple portal, let's say you just branding is important, so we want to get your logo and colors in there. We want to apply some branding in there. But other than that, we're just doing configuration. We're not doing any code. We're not doing any custom workflows. It's all pretty much out of the box. If everything's ready to go on your side, you've got your Microsoft 365, you've got an Azure subscription we can deploy into, because everything we deploys into your tenant. We don't run this. We don't host any of your data. It all lives in your Microsoft 365 and your Azure. In a hustle, we could get through that in about 2 weeks to say, yep, hit the ground running. The client knows what they want. We just need to deploy that, brand that, configure it. Away we go from there. Now, maybe you don't know exactly what you want. We do a lot of these portal projects. We've done well over 100 different portals for different scenarios. So we're happy to work with you. We also have a rich partner network. So if there's a local partner you'd like to work with in your geography, go through that requirements gathering. Really understand what you need your portal to be. And we're still not going to build a terribly sophisticated one. We may have a little bit of customer registration. We might have some customized workflows, but we're not getting to the point of the CEA or OCAS scenarios where we're integrating into Salesforce and Desire to Learn and all these external systems. That's really the complex one, where we get into complex enterprise integrations. We're building a data portal. I mean, typically there's a data warehouse build that's part of that. Those are 3 to 4 month projects, so those are more involved. They can go even further than that depending on the complexity, and a lot of our clients, as we get into enterprise space, they need us to work in a development and then a test environment and a user acceptance testing environment. So there's multiple deployments. There may be security audits and reviews that need to happen from that. So that can stretch out beyond that. depending on the complexity. But it gives you a sense if you're wondering, hey, I'd like to do one of these, what would it look like for my organization? You know, and I won't spend too much time on this. This just kind of gives you some scenarios of, you know, what is the portal product that I was showing you through those different scenarios. The documents product is really that ability to distribute and collect documents from a large set of users. Publisher is, hey, I want to build these rich pages, and I want the ability to edit those pages right in the portal and have a really simple editing experience through that. The user manager is the ability to manage the groups. I was showing you creating the committee groups and who's owners of those groups and who's members. So the idea is when you make somebody an owner, doesn't have to be an IT person, could be somebody in your organization. Future version of the product, we're going to support external delegation to say, hey, let's make somebody at our partner organization an owner of their own group and let them invite people from their organization into the group in our system. That model is something we're going to be supporting as part of that as well. So that whole ability to build those workflows, to have email invitations and welcome emails and all that process around that. Under the hood, it's all Microsoft. So it's all Azure Active Directory, it's all out of the box. So if you're leveraging that in your own systems, you know, it's not anything custom that we're deploying. It's easily leverageable in any of the Microsoft products or anything else you're doing that works against Azure Active Directory. So a lot to come at you. I know I tend to be a bit of a fire hose here as we go, but from a next steps point of view, as I mentioned, we will have the slides and recording published up. Goal is to have that out there tomorrow, so you'll be able to share that out. If there's folks in your organization that weren't able to attend that you think would benefit from this, by all means, share that link across from that point of view. We also will be sending out a Microsoft Forms poll link as part of that follow-up email. And really what we're curious about here is where would you like to go from a next steps point of view? You know, I could see doing a deeper technical dive on any one of those scenarios, you know, either into the portal side of it and the registration and auto approvals and logic apps and how that all works, into the documents and how that wires into some of the information security and compliance tools that Microsoft has, into the user manager and how that wires into Azure Active Directory and different policies and things like conditional access policies you can do from a security point of view. So we can get much deeper from a technical perspective. So if you're interested in that as a webinar, you know, we'll have some selections you can choose on that, or maybe you want a one-on-one session, there'll be the ability to schedule time with us and go deeper from that perspective. And open forum, if there's other sessions that you're interested in, absolutely let us know as part of that as well. We do have a number of upcoming events. It's actually a busy week for me. I'm heading downtown Toronto later today. My first in-person physical conference since COVID started. I'm going to be presenting at the Sector IT Security Conference. I'm actually using our products as an example. It's not a products pitch. It's how do we build our products and how do we use secure development practices in building that. I know a lot of organizations don't like to share the secrets of how they built security in their products. I think that's a mistake. I think if you've done things right, you should be able to share it, and knowledge of that shouldn't compromise you. It should actually benefit you. So it's going to be interesting. There's 6,000 people registered for this conference. It's going to be a big deal from that perspective. Logan and I are also going to be heading to Düsseldorf in Germany for our first international conference in quite some time at the European Collaboration Summit. It's a busy 3 weeks for Logan and I. Head almost straight from Germany to Las Vegas for the Microsoft 365 Collaboration Conference. And then I'm going to be presenting at 365 EduCon. I've got, I think, 3 or 4 different talks I'm giving at that conference down in Washington, D.C. So it's going to be a busy end of the year. But with that, we're a couple minutes before the top of the hour, so the timing worked out. Logan, I don't know if there's other questions that we want to raise live or hold those as follow-up.
One question that just came in. Any reason why you're not using just out-of-the-box SharePoint to actually build out the portals?
So it's really the complexity side of it, and I probably should have shown this, but if I go under the hood on any of these, what's a good example? So let's say I'm in the financial reporting example. There's native SharePoint underneath here, and we've got, you know, a document library in SharePoint, and it's got a folder for the subsidiary, and that subsidiary has document sets that you can drag and drop right through this SharePoint interface. But you look at what's in here. There's a whole lot of options in here, and there's a whole lot of complexity. Even getting somebody to to drag a document in and then tag it with a particular document type is a multi-step process that you can do quite a few different ways. And that's really confusing for somebody who doesn't use SharePoint every day. You know, these subsidiary companies, you know, for the most part in this particular example, don't use Microsoft 365. They're not familiar with this, and it's just overwhelming for them. So the idea is less is more. Let's make this simple. You know, let's have a simple upload. I can drag my documents in, ask them one question. What's the type of the document? You know, we auto name them, so there's policies in there. We can put the security and compliance in there. All that kind of magically happens in the background, and it's really simple. The same thing with inviting people in. I mean, when you're inviting users into the portal, if I'm in the CEA example, you know, let's come back here. So I mean, we've got the ability to search users and add new users easily through here, and it's a pretty simple interface. In fact, we've got more fields than we need on here. We're going to trim this back and simplify this. I could go into the Azure portal and do the same thing and say, hey, I want to go to Azure Active Directory, and you can delegate to your business and make them what's called a guest inviter role, and they can come in here and, you know, start adding users as guests through here. Again, super confusing, and you know, as an IT pro, people often find the Azure portal confusing. Never mind a general business user. Most organizations never want their business users to come here. So then you end up with IT being a gatekeeper in the middle there, and it just gets in the way. So we're trying to make it simpler and easy, but still leverage all the power of Microsoft 365 under the hood. So it's striking that balance. I think we're at the top of the hour there, so I want to say thank you to everybody for attending. If you have further questions, by all means, reach out to us. Happy to continue the conversation through email or schedule up a session from there. Thanks, everybody. Have a great rest of your day.